Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. It's not a podcast, it's a phenomenon. Here are your hosts, former Fox News political correspondent Joel Waldman and his mom, Carmela, a licensed marriage therapist and Holocaust survivor.
In Karm, I believe we're at lucky episode 19. And of all the guests we've had so far, today is the one I am most excited for. A former UFC fighter, a human assassin, a killing machine. So be careful what you say.
Why? He's in Oregon. I don't have to be scared. If he were here, he would beat me up.
He's got long arms. We'll get over here. So Karm, today I actually read a quote. As the crypto market, and we try not to date our shows, but I have to tell you, as you know, the crypto market is kind of imploding right now. And I've got some small investment in there. And I called you like a little schoolgirl crying. And then I saw a quote. It says, if you cannot control your emotions, you cannot control your money, per Warren Buffett. And that got me thinking. Hold on, that got me thinking.
Why would I hold on?
Maybe I'm not good at controlling my emotions after 51 years.
Oh my God. You're not good at controlling your emotions?
Yeah. Would you say you are?
What?
You got into the car today.
No,
I had two bottles of water. I had 2 bottles of water on the floor. You get in the car. What is this?
Anyway, I think I'm better at it.
Than me?
Than you.
You think?
Because I can release and control.
The cool thing is we've got Nate Quarry on, and he's a fighter. And in order to be a great fighter like he was,
mental.
You got to control the emotions.
The mental part, yes.
So once again, you're always the expert, but let's hear from Nate on this.
Yeah, but I'm the expert. I remained. Listen. Admitted that you haven't been this excited with all the other people, the psychiatrists.
I just said it.
What?
I just said we had
it sounds like a cliche, but it's the truth.
We had the president of NBC News on. I'm much more excited for this.
I know you are. Okay. I know you are. This is what you love with passion.
All right. And with that, we will toss to a break and be right back with the main schmooze. Live from America's News Headquarters, I'm Joel Waldman.
And I'm Eliana Diaz.
We're professional storytellers, trained for over 20 years in tried and true TV techniques to get your brand message out to the masses. Clearly, convincingly, and concisely. We're creatives, out-of-the-box thinkers, doers with the background to prove it. Network news correspondents, on scene at some of the biggest stories, from terror attacks home and abroad to natural disasters across America.
They really talked about 2 factors. One was the wind. Obviously, we're feeling that now.
We've interviewed the powerful and some pretty powerful players, performers who have won Oscars. Through it all, we've mastered the tricks of the trade, crafting authentic stories that are human, honest, and heartfelt. We are Content Partners. Welcome back to Surviving the Survivor. It's time now for the main schmooze.
Did I tell you I was excited for this episode? A good friend of mine, Jim Byrne, who used to do PR, shout out to Jim for the UFC, introduced me via Twitter, which is the way to do it in 2021. And that's how I got to meet Nate, and he was kind enough to come on our global podcast. And we're picking up subscribers, Karm, and everyone. I know it's going to your head a little bit. You're becoming a little diva-esque, but how are you feeling about the podcast so far?
Let's get the show on the road.
Let's do it. So today, as I said, we've got a former mixed martial artist, Nate Quarry. Nate, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
It's a privilege for us to have you on. And let me read your bio here, which will take about 25 minutes to get through. But long before The Rock, there was just Rock, Nate Quarry, a retired mixed martial arts fighter. Nate appeared on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, a show which off his back and other fighters' backs helped propel the UFC into $1 billion business. Quarry became the first Ultimate Fighter contestant to ever receive a UFC title shot, ultimately losing to then middleweight champion Rich Franklin, who happens to look just like Jim Carrey, Mom. Nate retired from MMA back about a decade ago with a 12-4 record, with 7 of his wins coming by knockout. And while Nate officially retired in 2012, incredibly, and we'll get to this, and I think it's still true, he still remains under contract with the UFC. Nate's not just a good-looking, square-jawed assassin. He's also a thinking man with strong opinions, kind of like you, Karm. Pushing hard for a fighters union and more rights for MMA athletes fighting professionally. He's also vocal about the state of politics in America, thanks to Twitter. Nate's life, in essence, began with a fight in many ways, clawing his way out of an abusive childhood while being raised, as he puts it, in a cult as a member of the Jehovah's Witness Church. There are few people in the world that I respect more than fighters because of their courage and discipline and willingness to take a punch in the face, which I've never done. My mother yelling at me is bad enough. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So since I kind of kicked off with this, I'm curious. I want to get what part of fighting is physical and what part of it is mental? And as you trained all these years, how did you train your mind in concert with your body?
Wow, to answer the first question, it's really a mixture. You have to have the mental strength along with the physical strength. They have to be married together. Otherwise, and I've said this before, that it can be easier to break a man's heart than it is his body. The body will continue fighting. Its job is to survive. If you can get a man to doubt himself, to want to give up, to want to tap as that submission is close, or not to get up off the mat, then you've won the fight. And for me, it was a very difficult journey of discovery to find how to make that work for myself. My motivations were simple, coming from the abusive childhood that I had, where I was denied every passion that I wanted. Being raised a Jehovah's Witness, they control what music you can listen to, what books you can read, what movies you can watch, what friends you can have, what jobs you can work out. You can't do any military service. It even controls what family members you can associate with. And I was raised, my parents converted to Jehovah's Witnesses before I was born. So this was all that I knew my entire childhood. And I think it was 7th grade. I'm in school, and as a Jehovah's Witness, you don't have your own special school. You go to the public schools. And I'm sitting at a school assembly, and there was a wrestling team demonstration. Now, this was the period where I started to get more and more depressed, as I saw the other kids at school playing sports, going to parties, having girlfriends. And here I am, 13 years old, in this cult, going to church 3 times a week, going in the door-to-door ministry every week, giving Bible talks, all these things that were unpleasant to me, that was forced upon me. And I'm just sitting there going, I just want to wrestle. I just want to have a normal childhood. And I'm just that nerdy, quiet kid in the corner who can't speak up, who can't do anything. And I see this wrestling demonstration. And there was another nerdy kid in the 8th grade who had glasses on. This was kind of goofy, scientist type of nerd. And he puts on this wrestling demonstration against one of the cool kids. And he wrecks the cool kid so badly. We're talking suplexes. It was like a pro wrestling demonstration. It was so amazing. And my heart just broke because I said, I want this so badly. That's what I want to do. I want to have that power, that self-confidence, that belief in myself. But if I was to go home and tell my parents I wanted to wrestle at school, the punishment I would have received would have been unpleasant, to say the least. And it wouldn't have been just Potentially somewhat physical. The physical abuse I received, as all abuse victims say, wasn't too bad. Yeah. I saw enough to be sure, but so much of it was all mental abuse. And every mistake that I made as a child, it wasn't just a kid goofing off, making a mistake. I was an embarrassment to the family. I was an embarrassment to God himself, because everyone at school knows you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you were to wrestle, can you imagine what a bad witness that would be on Jehovah? How could you even want something, such a worldly temptation like this? And it would just be the worst thing ever. So in my early 20s, that's when I started to find a little freedom. I'd moved out of my parents' house. I was working for what we would call at a worldly job, meaning I was working in construction for someone who was not a Jehovah's Witness. So for the first time in my life, really, I'm getting association with non-witnesses. And I'm starting to get a feel for what the world is like out there and what these non-witness people are like. And realizing, they're not quite as bad as I was told by the witnesses. And I started going to this comic book store. Like I said, I'm an old school nerd. And the owner of the comic book store, I'm going in there once a week to pick up my comics. I had my subscriptions and such. And he's asking me, hey, you want to go out to a bar and grab a drink? And I would still say, no, I can't make it. Sorry. And finally, I gave in, and we went out to a bar and had a drink. And it was one of the first times I'd ever been to a bar. First time with somebody who wasn't a witness, something like that. And at the end of the night, I just remember thinking, that's not as bad as I thought it was. Like I was told it would be. And then later on, he invited me to his grandparents' house for a Sunday dinner. And they were Catholic, I believe, or some form of Christian, not Jehovah's Witnesses, which again is the worst thing imaginable for a witness to go and do. And at the end of the meal, as I'm driving back home, I'm thinking to myself, these were genuinely nice people. They weren't trying to corrupt me by any manner of whatever sin the Jehovah's Witnesses said that they would be engaging in. I don't understand why God would want to kill these people at Armageddon. And my eyes just kind of slowly started to open. And right around that time, the UFC started playing. Mm-hmm. And I was hanging out with some friends, and a guy comes up to me and goes, man, there's these two guys beating the hell out of each other in a cage on TV. And I said to myself, who would do something like that? In this day and age, that's just crazy. Because I didn't really watch sports. I especially didn't watch any combat sports. I considered boxing to be just another form of violence. I didn't understand the artistry to it. And I go inside and I see Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie fighting. And it just blew my mind. Not just the athleticism and the skill that they displayed, but at the end of the fight, they stood up and they hugged one another. They shook hands. And I realized this isn't violence. The violence that I experienced as a child was 10 times worse than two adult grown men signing on a contract and saying, I'm going to see you in a cage and we're going to see who's better.
Do you mean the mental abuse, that violence, or the physical abuse that you were...
The physical more than anything. Uh-huh. Like I could never imagine slapping my daughter in the face or slapping my son in the face. And there was a time when my father was reaching for the remote control for the TV one time, and I flinched. Mm-hmm. And then he starts yelling at me, I don't hit you that often. What are you so upset? And then it becomes a worse scene because I flinched, because I had been smacked quite often. And now as my eyes...
And were you ever able to rationalize that? Like, here's a religious man who's raising his hand. I mean, is that something that you tried to sort of negotiate in your own mind, or were you too kind of wrapped up in it?
So this is my theory on all of that. If you look at men of my generation and you look at their fathers and then our father's fathers. So my grandfather was horrifically physically abusive on my father. Mm-hmm. Beat the hell out of him. Mm-hmm. Never told him he loved him, never sat down and talked with him, never tried to engage him in any manner. So when my father had kids, that's all that he knew. And so he worked very hard to reduce that physical abuse by 95%. It's still abuse. It's still too much, but he did the best he could with what he had. And so me coming from much less abuse and then trying to kind of figure out the ways and means about it, and how am I going to make my children's lives better? How am I going to be a better father? Then that involved me going to counseling, going to therapy, and coming to term with these things, and having a therapist tell me, it's not your fault. You're not the bad kid that you told you were. And I still have that kind of the running joke in the house is, but don't you know, if I just do everything perfectly, then my parents will love me.
I was just going to say, Nate, you managed to do something no one has ever done. You kept my mother quiet for 10 minutes, but now
I did stay quiet because I was thinking of all this. I was also
Carmela's a former therapist.
I was trying to figure, how was he with your mother?
Very loving, very, very kind. Never really, I think I saw them argue once or twice. There would be periods of silence.
But never physically abusive of her.
No, never.
And is your dad still with us? Are your parents still here?
My father passed away when I was 30, and that's a whole nother story. But he died at 30. My mother's still alive, although I have not seen her in 9 or 10 years or so. I don't know the last time I spoke to her because I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness. Part of their creed is once someone leaves the organization, you cut them out of your life.
What about your siblings? Did they stay with the Jehovah's Witnesses?
So my oldest sister is still a Jehovah's Witness. She's 10 years older than me. She's married to an elder in the church. I have not seen her in, I couldn't tell you the last time. My brother is 9 years older than me. He suffers from alcoholism, drug abuse, and in and out of homeless shelters, the last I heard. And my other sister has been married and divorced to 2 abusive husbands. And while I've tried to have a relationship with her in the past, it just never works out. And so I consider my family to be my daughter from a previous relationship, my son, my wife, and her family. That's my family, and it's been a very enlightening relationship to see how families who truly love one another, who tell each other they love one another, who have unconditional love for one another, how they interact. They still have their problems, they still have their screw ups, but you know that you have this base at all times. You can go out into the world, you can make a mistake, you can screw up, and yet your family will still love you and be there to support you. And as someone like myself, that was something I had to come to, and it goes back to the question about the mental state of fighting, where I had to determine my motivations, which was, this is going to give me self-esteem. I'm going to be able to take out my anger, my rage on this opponent who thinks that they're better than me. I get the opportunity to show that you're not. And then coming into the competition spirit was a very difficult thing throughout the years, because a lot of the people I trained with, specifically Randy Couture, he'd been wrestling since he was a little kid.
He's a huge legend in the sport.
Yeah, but I think you said something very interesting in one of those. I did a little homework on Jehovah's Witnesses and on what I found on the internet about you a little. And you said towards the end of fighting, suddenly you went into the, what is it called? You go into the
cage.
The cage.
Okay, yeah.
And then suddenly you felt, I don't feel any energy from any anger or anything. Did I understand it right?
She's saying that you lost basically lost your motivation in terms of,
like you were almost cured of that, like you got out a lot of that anger and now there was not enough left.
Yes,
like I have a lot of anger in me. I know I have a lot of anger.
You should start rolling jujitsu, Karm.
I do jujitsu with you.
She wants to. She's got anger issues. She wants to shoot at
I definitely have a lot of anger issues. And
Nate charges $95 an hour. You can, you can see.
No, but I could hear that. Like, okay, I don't feel that anymore. You know, I don't feel that level of rage or anger when I,
See, I hear this and I find like a weird, interesting common thread between the two of you.
Oh my God! Now I'm an
MMA fighter. No, because
MMA fighter.
So Karm was 4.5 years old when the Holocaust broke out, and she was in Yugoslavia. She was hidden in a boys' school. We've gone through the story on the podcast, but she's a tough broad. My mom.
Your
doesn't
wife
take
is pretty
she
tough
doesn't
too.
take any shit, Carmela, and
I try not to, but I do take a lot.
And she did, and you know, my dad is alive. He's a retired doctor. Carmela and Roy created a very good life, did well, kind of financially. And here's a guy
he
like
was a doctor and he worked very long hours. But you always present us like we are the Rockefellers before the Rockefellers.
Not like that. But what I'm saying is Nate really came from. He had to start over. What's wild about Nate too that I read, you weren't even involved in organized sports till you were 24, which is crazy because I have a son that just turned 2 and I'm furious he's not playing baseball yet because I want him. What's the right age to start jits, by the way?
Boy, well, my son is 17 months right now and we wrestle and I let him crawl all over me. So from my perspective, and I'm going to be figuring this out because my daughter had no desire to follow my footsteps in MMA or anything. But if my son wants to, it's going to be watching out for all the pitfalls that I fell into and making sure that someone's there watching his back, keeping it fun for him, keeping it safe for him.
Would you be okay with him if he wanted to become a cage fighter?
Well, my daughter wanted to ride horses and I'm not a huge horse person. Yeah. I think they're 2,000 pounds with a tiny little brain. They kind of make me nervous. Yeah.
Look at Christopher Reeve is a good example.
Yeah. But as I told her, I'm the last person to tell somebody you can't follow your dream because it makes me uncomfortable.
How old is she now? 13?
She is
14?
21.
21 now?
Wow.
That's a big girl.
So, yeah, if Judah Mack, my son, does not become a UFC lightweight champ of the world, I may have to disown him as well.
It's terrible when you have only one son because you put 15 sons worth of ambition. You know, they have to be this the best, this the best.
No, but do you realize how crazy it is that Nate did not start until he was really like 24 years old?
Well, he's an unusual person. There are usual people like the run of the mill, and then there are unusual. So, I'm not saying because you are here.
And now let me ask you this.
I really believe that you whatever you say, and I know you are 180 centimeters,
Karm,
6 feet tall. Oh, you are 6 feet tall. It does because it's new. We just started working on the, with video. Before we did 17 without the video, so I don't know where to look. but anyway,
we're so
where
professional.
was I?
You were, I don't know. You
6 feet tall.
Wait, where were we?
You said I was 6 feet tall.
6 feet tall.
Yeah, you were and the whole thing. You were still 6 feet tall, and you are 180 pounds. Okay,
you fought at 185
and
pounds.
I saw that you are very muscular and everything. But I really don't believe that's what
you were
made
getting
it.
to the fact that Nate's got a very strong mind.
Exactly. I think that's what's working here, not the physical, because the physical is not that unusual.
Do you feel that way about yourself? If people like us ask you, do you feel like you've kind of got
the mental?
Do you sort of feel like you've got a steel trap mind?
I always talk as if I knew what the hell I'm saying, but I don't.
Well, I coming from my Christian background as a Jehovah's Witness, it's very difficult for me to compliment myself and say, yeah, I did all this and that's why I did it. But I will say that when I started training, it was with a lot of guys who were a lot better than I was. Mm-hmm. They were more talented. They had a background in wrestling. They had done competing when they were a kid. But I just showed up every day and I wasn't afraid to work hard. I wasn't afraid to look stupid. Mm-hmm. Because when you walk into the gym at 24 and you're training with people that have been training for years, you're going to look dumb. And now I'm 49. And when my career ended, my last fight, I was at 38. The whole left side of my face was caved in. So I had to have a massive reconstruction
I heard
surgery.
You have 13 pins in your
13
face.
Screws. Yeah.
13 screws, not pins.
Yes.
screws.
So I had to get my face put back together. That took 7-8 months. And then I had another disc in my back collapse. So I had to get another back surgery. Well, the surgery failed. So I had to have that redone and then another surgery. So I had several years where I wasn't doing much training. And quite honestly, I was just burned out. The stress of fighting had just weighed on me so much that I was taking time off. And then when I got engaged to my wife and I got married, I decided I was going to go back into the gym again and start training. And I just went to a little gym that I had a relationship with, and I was training with some newbies doing no-gi jiu-jitsu, which is one of my specialties, something I'm good at. I took off the gi, the jacket and the pants 20 some years ago and never really put it back on. And then
so how long ago was this reemergence into the gym? Is this recent?
This was about 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. Meanwhile, the guys at the gym are like, who's this nerdy guy? And he comes in and kicks their ass.
And then this COVID thing happens. And the gym that I'm training at and my wife had asked me, hey, do you want to leave that place where you're training? I looked around and I went, no, I'm very happy being the big fish in the tiny little pond. I'm good. And then COVID happened. And a friend of mine who's been a black belt for 9 years, who is roughly my size, who was one of my old training partners and coaches, says, hey, I don't have anybody to train with. Why don't we start training together and put on your gi and we'll start rolling together. And so at the time, I'm 48. Like I said, I'm 49 now. I've been a purple belt in jiu-jitsu for 20 years.
Is black belt the best?
Yeah, black's above purple. Yes.
Yes.
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, but it takes
you're
takes about 10 years to get a
purple.
No, to get a black. 10 to 12 years.
Belt,
yeah.
So the running joke is always, oh, when were you a purple belt? I was a purple belt at the same time because I've been a purple belt for 20 years.
Are you going for the black belt now or what?
My goal is really to have the skills of a black belt, whether or not I get recognized. So back when I think I got my blue belt when I was probably 25 or 26, something like that. And I remember when it was given to me, I actually thought to myself, what the hell am I going to do with this? I'm just a fighter. And my goal is to beat black belts and then have people say, what belt are you? And I'll go, oh, I'm just a white belt. I don't really know anything. Sorry about breaking your arm. And then I got my purple belt because I went down to California for a competition. And I won the competition in my weight class and ended up going to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym down there where we had relationships. And I was rolling with a black belt that I knew. And let me be clear, I outweighed him by probably 40 or 50 pounds, 10 years younger than him. I was in competition shape. He was not. And I had to goad him to come on the mat and roll with me. And he does. And I caught him in a triangle and tapped him out, which really upset my coach because as he yelled at me, you never tap out a black belt in his own school. Yeah. And I yelled at him.
It's like a respect thing. You're not supposed to tap out a black belt in their own gym, which is what he did.
Oh, okay.
A triangle is when you wrap your legs around a guy's neck.
Yeah.
And I told my coach, I'm just an athlete, man. I don't care about your little rules and drama club stuff that you have going on. And then that black belt came up to Oregon a few months later and put on a seminar, and we rolled again. Uh-huh. And he tapped me, I think, with an arm bar, and I tapped him again with a triangle. Uh-huh. And he stood up and he looked at me and he goes, the next time you compete, wear a purple belt. And I looked at him and I said, Coach, I don't even have a gi. And he said, buy one and get a purple belt with it.
Yeah.
And because I had switched over to MMA, and MMA jiu-jitsu is very different than gi jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And that same coach, I have a great story about him. His name is Chris Howder. He's one of the original black belts in the United States. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal guy, loves jiu-jitsu, breathes it. Mm-hmm. When I first started training, so now I'm probably 24 and a half, maybe 25 years old. I'm rolling with Chris Howder. And again, the size difference is the same. The weight is the same, just I know even less at that point. And he gets me in a triangle. And my counter to the triangle is I pick him up off the mat and start pile driving him down, which is a no-no.
Yeah.
And he switches into an arm bar and holds me and makes me tap for an eternity as I'm just And he lets go of my arm, and I'm rubbing my elbow, and he looks at me and he says, in the future, you may want to consider using more technique and a little less brute strength.
Wow, that's interesting.
And I looked at him.
More technique, less brute strength. There's a famous Hoist Gracie quote, "You give me the right leverage and I can lift the world." Right? So that's like...
And I looked at him and I said, thank you for the lesson, coach. Thank you for not breaking my arm. And for the first time, I got it. I understood, I'm not here to win. I'm here to learn and get better. and here I am 25 years later at 49. And now I'm training 3 times a week in the gi with not 1 black belt, but 2 black belts who are making my life miserable. And I understand why old dogs don't learn new tricks, because it's really painful and it's exhausting. But for the first time in 20 years, I realized I'm training because I want to, because I love this sport, because it keeps my mind active and excited. I'm not training because I have a fight coming up. I'm not training because I have to get money to put food on the table. And that's what gave me the passion in this first place. And yeah, it's been a ridiculously crazy journey, and I can't tell you how.
Is there a possibility of you teaching it one day?
Perhaps. I've always been, in my fighting career, I've always been the athlete. And athletes are notoriously selfish. So I'm always, what can I learn from this? If somebody wants to ask me, how did you do that? Can you teach me this? My first response is, well, I have to do it again so I can see what I did, so I can know what to teach you, because I wasn't paying attention. And then secondly, of course, I'm happy to share anything that I have with anyone.
I'm curious, what do you think drew you to kind of wrestling and then jits coming out of the church, the cult, as you put it, as opposed to, let's say, baseball or basketball?
Rage.
Yeah. So you had a lot of rage pent up, and that's...
I was very angry. I would look at my life and I would just say, I feel like I'm meant for more than this. I feel like I should have mattered. Like I could have had great things in my life, but I was held down. And I say that quite literally. My father told me on his deathbed, I intentionally held you down. I didn't want you to realize how good you could be and what you could accomplish, because he wanted me to be a Jehovah's Witness, a very subservient life. And he told me, if you knew how much you could do, how good you could accomplish the things, then you would just run off and take over the world. And I couldn't have that happen. So I had this anger inside of me where I felt like I was meant for something, but I had this thumb constantly holding me down.
And on his dying, he was still a believer. When he was dying, he was still, or he lost a little of it?
He was still a believer in the core beliefs of the Jehovah's Witnesses, but another story with that. So
anything that's uncomfortable to talk about, you're not going to talk about it, right?
No, I'm good. I'm good. This is good therapy.
Yeah.
When my father was dying, he died. His bone marrow quit producing red blood cells, so he basically suffocated over a period of a few months. And even though I was excommunicated from the church and my parents really didn't have much association with me, I went and I spent the last 3 weeks of his life with them, taking care of him, getting ready for his passing, consolidating their bills and mortgages, things like that. Well, my oldest sister, who's still a Jehovah's Witness, was there. And I hadn't seen her in years. And I walked into the house and she was sitting at the breakfast table reading the newspaper. And I said, "Hey, Vicky, how are you?" And she lowered the paper, looked at me and said, "Hello, Nathan," and then went back to reading. And I went, well, that's her beliefs. That's the way she's chosen to live her life. It is what it is. And so I go in and I walk in to see my father, who's a few days from dying. And he said, "Did you see your sister?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, how did she treat you? How did she talk to you?" And I didn't want to get into it. So I just said, "Well, as you would expect." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, perhaps her eyes will be open before it's too late, like it is with me."
Oh.
And it was then that I realized he was just, his life was filled with regret.
He was asking almost for forgiveness.
And we had a moment a few months beforehand where he had told us that he was dying and he wanted to bequeath me and my younger sister, the one that's 6 years older than me, were there. We were the only two that were able to make it. And he wanted to bequeath us some items. And he told us flat out, he goes, "I have nothing. I have nothing of value to give you, but a father should give his children something. And he handed over this box. And he started to go into this speech about all of the mistakes that he had made and all the things that he wished that he had done differently. And I cut him off and I said, look, man, I'm not going to sit here and listen to anyone badmouth my father, not even my own father. Mm-hmm. You did the best you could with what you had. Everything you did, you felt like you were doing the right thing and out of love. It is what it is. And that was my way of saying, I'm not going to walk around for the rest of my life angry, because the strides that he made coming from his background were huge. It wasn't necessarily enough. He could have done better. But I'm sure my daughter will say the same thing about me. We all do the best we can with what we have. We've all been programmed by these things that happen in our childhood. And we try to do the best that we can.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a beautiful story.
You get it now?
Yeah, I mean, but that's just kind of a beautiful story, because it sounds like you guys made amends, you know?
Yeah, in a maybe not too late, too little, too late, but you still did.
Yeah. And that's something you can, live peacefully with.
No, but I read about the Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, when I lived in Switzerland, they would always come around with the light tower, or what is the name of
Watchtower.
Watchtower, and they were always impeccably dressed, with tie and suit, and two of them would come to the door. And I was now surprised that you said that at the age of 13 or 14 you had to go out already doing this.
Oh, much younger than that.
Yeah.
No, I gave my first biblical talk, my first Bible reading at age of 7 at the church. Yeah. I was doing the door-to-door ministry work from the time I was a baby. My parents carried me from door to door.
So that those religious feelings, my radar tells me you still have some of those religious feelings, like the Ten Commandments type of religious feelings, be good to your fellow man and be honorable and all those. You don't think some of it stayed with you?
My beliefs are that I just try to be a good person. And the difference is, with religious people, they try to be good people when they are good people, because they feel that they're being watched from above.
By somebody above.
And they will be punished if they don't, and they will be rewarded if they are. And if I buy my son a new toy and all of a sudden he's the most popular kid in the neighborhood, I'm going to go, hey, these are false friends. They only like you because you're going to give them something. So if I'm this God up in heaven and I'm going, so this guy's only worshiping me because he thinks he'll go to hell if he's not good, and this guy over here who really doesn't believe in me just tries to make the world a better place because he thinks it's the right thing to do, that's the guy that I'm going to be.
No, what?
The one thing I was thinking throughout this whole thing is maybe they should force Jewish boys, instead of like a bar mitzvah, we should be thrown into like an octagon or something at like age 7, so we toughen up. I feel
well in this country, yes.
Well, in Israel, you go to the army, but so Nate, you're wearing a cool shirt, and I actually want to find out where to buy that. But tell us about it. Tell us about what is the Zombie Cage Fighter.
Zombie Cage Fighter is the autobiographical horror story of my life.
Perfect.
Everyone has been bugging me to write kind of a biography, and I have started one. Forcing myself to sit down and write it all out has been difficult. But when I wanted to kind of get the ball rolling, I wanted to tell my story, but do it with a little flair. So I wrote down the things that I've been through, my motivations, and I added zombies, and it became Zombie Cage Fighter. And we just finished a 6-issue graphic novel that tells the whole story of it. I've had these incredible artists to work with. Same thing with this shirt. Anyone can go to zombiecagefighter.com. We don't have the store running quite yet because we were focused on the Kickstarter campaign for the comic book, but we'll have that up and going, I think, within a month. And the shirt selection is phenomenal, I got to be honest.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
I went on Amazon. I must say, I must have done, it's already on Amazon or not?
People have quite often bought my stuff and then they'll resell it because my comic books are kind of rare, and I have statues of zombie cage fighter I've seen people resell.
But are you asking about the comic book? If you can buy, is a comic book for sale now?
So in 2012, I did a one-shot single issue that we call issue 0. It's just a snapshot into the world of zombie cage fighter. So I've had that for sale on the website for a few years. And then the graphic novel, just being finished a couple months ago, hasn't been for sale yet online. There's actually only 50 copies of it in existence right now that I did as media copies. So anyone in the media that got those, I got to say you're pretty lucky, because the comic is awesome. And I'm in talks right now with a major studio to do an animation of my story.
That's awesome. I saw that on Twitter the other day. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's very creative. You are like he said, Renaissance man, but you are really doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, this is awesome. So let's get to and we can kind of roll back, but there's a couple of things that I want to get to. And that is, I'm looking at my list of questions here, but you filed a class action lawsuit, which also takes a lot of cojones to do against the UFC. Can you tell us about that and what the motivation was?
Well, myself and the named plaintiffs, Kung Lee, Kyle Kingsbury, John Fitch, Javier
they're all killers,
They're all killers, you said?
Yeah. We believe that the UFC has unlawfully monopolized the sport of MMA and monopsonized the sport of MMA and artificially withheld or held down our wages for many, many years. So we teamed up with yes?
No, you can finish your sentence. No, I thought I saw an interview and I thought it was a very fabulous explanation that made it very clear to me what was going on. It said, if you take the NFL, there are different teams.
Correct. So the NHL, the NFL.
So if you kicked out of one team or you don't work out with one team or whatever, you always have other options, and nobody has monopoly. But in MMA, there is a monopoly.
Yes.
Yes. But what I read, and correct me if this is wrong, but the NHL, NFL, NBA, 50% of the revenue from events would go to the athletes, whereas in the UFC, it's something like 20%. Is 15. That right?
Even less.
15, yeah.
And so you're looking to get back pay there, but you're also not a party to you're not a plaintiff anymore, right?
I'm not. And when we started the lawsuit, knowing with the statute of limitations, I just had to accept and come to terms with, am I doing this to get a payday, or am I doing this to change the sport and make it better for the next generation? Now, let's not fool ourselves. I would love to be appropriately compensated for the years of work that I did where the UFC underpaid me. And perhaps the court will decide that I should be included due to all my work. But I had to come to terms really with, I want the next generation of fighters to have the opportunity to truly make life-changing money, just not the promoters. And so with the lawsuit, as well as looking for monetary compensation for over 1,200 fighters who have been wronged, we're also going to be looking at things like contract negotiations, not having these never-ending contracts that you have with the UFC. So just like if you're the number one contender in the UFC and you've been knocking everybody out and you're ready for that title shot, the UFC will come to you and say, hey, you're at your last fight of your contract. We don't let anyone fight for the title with the last fight of their contract. You have to find a title extension. And if you won't, well, then you just don't get a title shot. And so you sign that contract extension. Let's say it's for 3 fights and you win the title and you defend your title twice. You're at the end of your contract, right? No, because there's something called the Champions Clause, where every fight adds another fight. So it becomes never ending. In my last fight in March, I think, of 2010, as I mentioned, the whole left side of my face was caved in, need major reconstructive surgery. And I was considering whether or not I was going to continue on or not. But I received a call from the UFC about a month after my surgery. And I thought to myself, oh, maybe they're calling to see how I'm doing. Maybe they're calling me to thank me for continuing to fight into the second round when my face had been shattered in the first. No, the phone call was to tell me, we still have you under contract, and because you've been injured, until you provide a doctor's note saying you're ready to continue fighting again, your contract's put on hold. And then in 2012, when I decided, no, I'm done with this, it's time for me to move on, I received a form email saying, you still have 2 fights with us left on your contract. You cannot go fight anywhere else ever until you fulfill your obligation to us. And so it's just a never-ending contract.
When you were fighting, did you feel like you were getting compensated appropriately?
No.
No, you thought it was a lot.
I am. It may shock you to hear this, but I'm the guy that just assumes everyone wants to hear what I think. Uh-huh. And so as I'm dealing with the UFC, there were times when I got personal phone calls from Dana White telling me to shut up because I'm talking too much about the business side. I'm talking too much about wages. I'm talking too much about sponsors. Nobody wants to hear that. Just be quiet, do your job, call up the next fighder.
And what would you say to him? Yeah, what would you say to him? Would you get into it with him? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Really?
I would disagree. I mean, but so like one time when at the beginning we were told we can't pay you very much, but you can have whatever sponsors you want, and hopefully that will make up the difference. And then it was, well, we need to approve all your sponsors. Then it was, you can't have any conflicting sponsors. If the UFC is sponsored by Harley Davidson, you can't have Yamaha, Honda, Kawasaki. Mm-hmm. Yamasaki's a ref.
It's a ref. Mario Yamasaki. Mario Yamasaki is a referee.
Oh, okay.
And
these are motorcycles. I know that. Hey, I knew that.
Yeah.
And then it moved on to, well, now your sponsors have to pay the UFC $50,000 for the privilege of sponsoring you. Then it was they have to pay the UFC $100,000. Then it was you don't get any sponsors. Reebok is going to be your sponsor. And so as these things were happening, I was doing interviews saying, this is ridiculous. I'm living off my sponsorship, not the $5,000 the UFC is paying me. And so I got a call about that from Dana saying, shut up. Nobody wants to hear about that. And what am I going to do? Tell the guy who's making 97 cents out of every MMA dollar spent worldwide, screw you, cut me. I'll go to Bob's Chicken Shack and fight there on the weekends. Yeah. No, they have monopolized.
I think if I understand it from my extensive information from the internet, that you actually. You said that fighters would literally
Karm, would you like to take this time to actually admit that you've been watching every UFC pay-per-view for the last 10 years?
And but nobody, thank God, asked me so far how I feel about Ultimate Fighting.
How do you feel about Ultimate Fighting?
I don't want to
She can't watch it. She thinks it's too violent. I can't
watch it. It's too horrible. You know, there are certain things in life, and I'm not a sensitive soul. I can see blood. I can see feces. I am not, going to faint. But I cannot watch executions, torture,
and the UFC.
And I don't understand this nice Jewish boy who is afraid of his shadow and loves to.
I've got a lot of pent up aggression. I have so many questions.
He inherited from. We don't beat each other up, but he watches Ultimate Fighting.
I need to go back to therapy. So when we got here, I'm pulling into a parking spot, Nate, and we live in Miami, transplanted from New Jersey, I have to say, and. This guy I'm parallel parking. The guy pulls up 1 inch off my back bumper. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy with her in the car? She's like, don't talk like that. You're going to get shot in Miami. But
I said they don't speak English. They use the gun.
If you're Nate Quarry, you don't have to worry. Like, you can talk shit to whoever you want.
No, you can't. Because you can't stand up against a knife or a gun.
Well, but I'm saying, like, is there a single person, guns aside and knives aside, that you would... average person at an average bar that you would worry about to this day?
It's really such a moot question.
He's going to be humbled.
I have no desire to get punched in the face for free. If somebody was to come up to me, and so I was making an appearance at a bar many years ago, and one of the waitresses comes up, and it's a dump bar in the middle of nowhere. a waitress comes up and says, "Hey, watch out for these two guys over there. I overheard them talking about jumping you and trying to make a name for themselves." And I walked right up to those two guys and I said, "Whoa, you guys are badass. I'm not going to mess with you. Could you tell me where the bathroom is?" And they pointed and I walked off, and that was it. Because people get in fights, people get in street fights because they don't have the ability to convey their thoughts eloquently, so they feel that they need to enforce them on someone with their fists. Or two, and more likely, they have this low self-esteem and it makes them feel better to beat someone up. Look at how badass I am. I've been down that road and I know exactly where I'm at in the pecking order of things. I did not make it to a UFC championship. I had a 7-3 record in the UFC, 18-4 overall. I'm cool with all that. Me beating up some guy in a bar someplace is not going to benefit me. It is only going to end badly. Either I'm going to get injured, he's going to get injured, and perhaps fatally something really bad could happen. Then I'm getting sued. I'm going to prison. I would much rather leave. If somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm going to start some trouble with you," like, dude, I came here to spend time with my friends, my wife. I don't want to get punched in the face for free. If it really bothers you that much, I'll go someplace else.
This is Nate's very humble way of saying that he would kill the guy.
No. I heard this before in different variations. I usually talk about any topic ever in life, as if I were a world expert. If I don't know the slightest thing, I still talk like that. But I heard that people who know how to kill,
they don't. Yeah, they
are like you are the most secure with them because they know that they can be lethal. So they don't need to go out and prove their testosterone levels. They just are cool about it.
That's exactly what it is. I have nothing to prove to anyone. I do this stuff for a living. I've done it. Learning how to beat someone, how to break them, how to choke them has been my life. I've been doing it for over half my lifetime. It's what I do better than probably anything else in the world.
So how do you see the future
I have no desire to do it.
How do you see the future?
Future of what?
Of your life. I mean, as 51, 52, 53.
Lots of aches and pains.
Yeah.
You must have some pain from all these injuries.
Do you worry about residual effects? Do you worry about like the CTE type stuff? I mean, you seem obviously
very much.
Like you mean Muhammad Ali? Like
yeah, there's CTE is why am I blanking on what it stands for? But it's brain trauma from things like
he interviewed Muhammad Ali. I remember.
Yes, I did.
I'm very concerned about that. And as I said, I kind of got back into the gym around 3 years ago or so. One of the big life-changing things that happened was I was on massive dosages of opioids, Oxycontin, Norco, gabapentin, which is a nerve anti-inflammatory because I had such bad sciatica. I discovered CBD, and specifically I used Receptor Natural CBD, and I started taking that within
CBD?
It's cannabis oil, like
okay.
which doesn't. It has no psychotropic effects. It doesn't get you high or anything. For me, it 100% removes inflammation, and so it's a massive pain reliever for me. And because I started taking that, I was able to get back in the gym, and I'm completely off all of the prescription opioids. It's been phenomenal.
Nate, I don't want
with the CTE. Yeah,
I don't want to compete with you, but I just tore my meniscus. I might have to hit you up after this for whatever CBD you're using. I don't want to put Nate and I on the same level, but I did tear my meniscus.
It's not a competition. We can both be hurting. And the stuff that I use is receptornaturals.com. They're a phenomenal company. I'm not a paid spokesman for them. They send me product and that's it. I just love it so much. I won't shut up about it because it's helped me so much. And I recognize when I don't take it because I start aching and hurting more. And it's been phenomenal. I tore my left bicep off 2-3 months.
Listen, maybe it would be shorter if you just told us, you know what, part of you still works.
Meanwhile, I'm like, I stubbed my.
You have all these parts that were like destroyed in one way or another.
Meanwhile, I stubbed my toe. I
know. Joel calls me when he stubs his toe, and I say to him, "Be brave."
No, they say that's a brutal injury, tearing the bicep. It happened to Matt Serra.
So the gym where I was training at, they asked me to do a guest spot coaching a kickboxing class. The very first combination I threw with a big left hook, I hit that thing hard, and I hadn't thrown a big left hook in a long time, and the left bicep just ripped right off and curled up.
This is the
bicep? I looked down.
Yeah.
Yep. I looked down, I looked up at the class, and I said, I just tore off my left bicep. We're going to work on right hands tonight. Oh, and so I taught the rest of the class with my left hand tucked into my shorts. And then I within 2 weeks, I had the surgery, had it redone, had it reattached, but I had a baby on the way in 2 months. So I'm like, I got to get this recovered. I need to do what I can. Started taking the CBD, which in my mind really helped reduce the inflammation, keep the blood flowing in there. I was back on the mat training within 3 months of my surgery, and I was 100% at 6 months and tossing my baby around. And now it's totally fine. There's been stuff like that, just random injuries where the CBD has helped me so much. It's just incredible.
That's good to know. I just realized I made a fatal error, and I think our Zoom is going to end in about 3 minutes. So a couple quick things I just want to ask you about.
No. First, then let's thank him first. If it's only 3 minutes.
Hold on. So,
no, really.
Tell us real quick about your coming out of retirement fight. This shows you the kind of guy that Nate is. I thought this was an amazing story.
The kid
back in 2015, but you got to make it quick so you don't get cut off.
There was a young man, Jacob Beckman, who'd been training in MMA for quite a few years. And his goal was to be a UFC champion, UFC fighter. And everyone said, well, that's not possible for you. You have Down syndrome. And I heard this story, and that there was some talk about him fighting somewhere on the local show. And I stood up and I went, I've been told enough throughout my life what I can and can't do. I don't like it. And I don't like other people being told that. So I went and met with him, met with his mother, and I told her my main priority is making sure Jacob is safe. The second priority way down the list is my safety. So let's do this. And we put on a show at Chael Sonnen's show up in Portland, Oregon, and the FCFF, Full Contact Fighting Federation. And it was my shot to go once again for UFC gold. I fell short. He caught me with an ankle lock in the second round and tapped me out. But I think Jacob will be a great champion. And it was nice to see a young man get a chance to fulfill his dreams and hopefully let his mother know as well that people out there do care. And hopefully this gave some attention to the community as well.
Nate, in Miami, we call that a mensch. You're a true mensch.
Exactly.
Man.
I was going to say, it's like you picked up the best parts of the religion and you carried it all through. I don't know if you see that.
I consider being called a true mensch one of the highest compliments I could get. I appreciate that very much.
Hey, Nate, thank you so much. We're going to run out of time. So,
Nate, listen.
Karm?
How I feel about ultimate fighting is one thing, but I never met a fighter, and you are the first one. And if there were one more like you, I would begin to accept it more, because you are wonderful. Really, you are wonderful. Deal with it.
Thank you. And I'll invite you to watch my fight against Caleb Starnes, where there was no blood, very little punching, and maybe that can work you into the
You'll YouTube that.
Every now and then Joel almost wants to bribe me to watch. He says because he needs company to watch these things.
By the way, what's harder, raising a toddler or getting in the octagon? I have 3 kids and I barely surviving.
3 kids under 7 he has.
Definitely raising a toddler, because in the cage, you don't have to worry about going too far.
Yeah. All right, Nate. Listen, thank you so much. This was awesome.
You gave, and hopefully we'll be able to be seen on YouTube, and hopefully he will be able to be seen, because we would like to.
Well, he will, because we're on YouTube.
Yeah.
So we will. Nate, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I'll hit you up offline and we'll stay in touch.
It will probably take a little while. The technical part is going slowly, but in a few weeks you will be able to see it.
Yeah.
And we wish you all the best in life with your 2 children and your wife and maybe future children.
All the best.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Okay.
We'll
My
talk
third
soon.
is on the way.
Oh, wow. Oh.
You see, I'm psychic. Did you know that? Because I said with maybe future
We are
one.
breaking news here on Surviving the Survivor. Nate Quarry's third is on the way.
True, no one knows that.
As we say in Miami, Mazel Tov. That's awesome.
Anyway.
All right, man. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
All the best.
We'll be right back with the news schmooze.
Welcome back. It's time for the news schmooze.
Before we get to this week's headlines, Karm, what did you think of Nate?
Every week you just ask me, and it's right after you finish talking to people. And I don't know if people are just wonderful. Maybe they are just wonderful.
Do you see what I'm talking about with fighters? Like,
No, wait 1 second. Wait a second. You asked a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are just so giving once they agree to be on the podcast that I feel that they are giving me like the most precious gifts and their secrets. And I felt like really emotional about him.
Yeah, this was like an unusual interview with an MMA fighter, if I may say so myself.
That's definitely not my stereotype.
But do you hear what he said at the beginning? This is why I love fighting, because he said, if you can break a man's heart, you'll break their body.
Exactly.
And fighters are always taught these sorts of things, but they're truisms. Like,
no, that's
you don't
true.
have to. You don't have to.
That's what we were talking about in other contexts today about the power of the mind control.
But he's very cerebral, but he lives it. I talk about it.
He's a very emotional, cerebral person.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's very genuine, though.
Why did he mention heart? He didn't say. I said mind control.
Yeah.
He said heart control.
Very interesting. Okay, time to get to the news. Now, Karm, did you see 60 Minutes this week?
Of course, I never watched 60 Minutes.
It's gotten a lot worse, but it's still okay.
I'm not judging. I don't know because I never watched.
There was a segment, a 12-minute segment on UFOs, which the military and the Pentagon call UAPs.
Yeah. It was mentioned at another thing.
And former President Barack Obama, have you heard of him? He came out and he says, when it comes to aliens, there are some things I just can't tell you on air. He said this on a late night talk show. He said, look, the truth is that when I came into office, I was like, all right, is there a lab somewhere where we're keeping the alien specimens in the spaceships? He deadpanned and said no. But he said he's actually being serious here. He says there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think these are? Because if you watch 60 Minutes,
I heard about it. Okay,
these are Air Force pilots who are highly educated.
I know that these are not like fiction things.
So what the hell are they? They say they have
I know exactly what they are.
Oh yeah.
Why come to me, Pentagon? I am here.
It's now called the UAP Pentagon Task Force. Please contact Carmela at 305.
No, don't give them because they will. I tell you what I think it is.
What do you think it is? Before you say that, let me tell you one thing. These are objects that the pilots said are flying, number one, at altitudes that are impossible for regular aircraft to fly at. And they are going in...
And they can go into water.
1 second, they are going from a distance of off radar in a matter of a second or two, is what I'm trying to say. That they're incredibly fast, and there's no propulsion, there's no wings.
Yes, and no jets.
Okay, so what are these?
Chinese.
They brought that up in the 60 Minutes program. They said that that's one of the things that they look at, and they have found no evidence that it's the Chinese. And they asked these pilots, how often do you see?
And they said all the time.
They said every day. Is it possible that there's alien life? Carmela?
Okay, if there were,
yes.
Just one more minute. Let's assume there is alien life.
Yes.
why the heck don't they come and say hello? Why do they have to play these hide and seek games?
Well, like right now, the Palestinians and the Jews are fighting. But let's say like aliens from a foreign land came, we'd have a lot bigger issues if they were looking to start a war.
Well, why would they start a war?
I don't know. You think it's like E.T., like we would just be touching fingers?
It could be. It could be. But anyway, I don't understand why do they spend years and years and years and years overflying and not doing more or not doing less?
I think the term is flying over, not overflying, but let's move on. So we were listening to Joe Rogan on the way here. I've given you homework to listen to him, as our one and only goal, as Conor McGregor, a UFC fighter, says, is not to take part, but to take over. Joe Rogan, we are coming for you, not from you, but for you. Joe Rogan, we're coming for you.
No, we are not. We can tolerate one competition.
Nate Quarry will kick your ass as we come for you.
One competition we can take.
So he is facing backlash, and Joe, I like the guy a lot. He says some dumb things, but I actually agree with him here. He suggested that woke culture is soon going to lead to the silencing of straight white men. He made the comments on his podcast and said that he has concerns about not being allowed to talk due to his privilege. He did not say white privilege, but privilege. He says you can never be woke enough. That's the problem. It keeps going, explaining that it keeps going further and further and further down the line. And you get to the point where you capitulate, where you agree to all these demands, and it'll eventually get to where straight white men are not allowed to talk. And I actually agree with that. And he's taken a ton of backlash, which is interesting because that's like cancel culture and the wokeness coming to get Joe Rogan for saying something that I think is truthful. What do you think?
Now, here we have a few minutes because I have to go back in history.
Yeah, we got a couple,
there
not a lot.
There are very few cultures where the women had the voice. Throughout history, in almost 99% of cultures, be there here or in the Amazon or wherever, the men are ruling and they are talking, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, the white men, European white men who colonized America, they were talking. The women usually never had any rights. Isn't it time for the men to shut up and let the women talk? I kind of like it.
Moving on. Speaking of letting women do the talking, the estimated 3,821 strip clubs in the United States are starting to open up again, but it is proving to be catastrophic for the dancers. The estimated revenue over 2020 fell close to 20%. And under guidelines, for example, not here in the great city of Miami in the state of Florida, where you can go to a strip club and see naked women.
How would you know that?
Oh, I was told by friends. But in San Francisco, for instance, strippers say that the food is all sealed. Strippers and patrons must keep their masks on. Performances are limited to stage dances with no physical contact with customers, lap dance and private VIP rooms, the source of a stripper's main income. All that stuff is still prohibited. Should we lift restrictions on strip clubs, Karm?
I really need. Can I get back to you next week on this one?
We'll be right back with 3 questions for Grandma.
It's time now for 3 questions for Grandma.
And we are back for a final quick segment. We know you can't get enough, so here we go. 3 questions for Grandma, and this week I fell behind in my responsibilities, so it might be 1.5 questions for Grandma this week. So, Grandma, question number 1. Under your hair, do you have skin?
Yes, 100%.
And under your, it's a 2-part question.
Oh, I thought I was so smart. I knew the answer.
And under your skin, do you have blood?
Yes.
See that, kids? 2 questions. And let's see here. Why does grandma use curse words? We've discussed that. What makes white white? When is the Earth's birthday?
You know, when we lived in Highland Park, New Jersey, our neighbor was Arno Penzias.
Arno Penzias, who won the Nobel Prize for the Big Bang Theory. We've talked about it on the show.
We cannot live this down, that we lived in the same small town. Now, he would have known it. It's like the secret is buried with him.
Well, he's still alive, but he has Alzheimer's.
So I think that the question of the age of the planet exists, I think.
Karm, do you worry about Nate's health? I mean, this is a real thing. I mean, Ali got Parkinson's from fighting, they say.
I tell you, he
speaks beautifully.
I said to him, like half jokingly but seriously, I said, everything, he destroyed all parts of his body. I said, just tell me the one or two that are still functioning. I mean, he has children, so some parts of him are functioning.
You know, I don't know.
That was nasty.
I don't know what it is, but I don't know. Like, I feel like I would give up my body and my brain to be a fighter for like 5-10 years just to feel like I was tough.
Can I just say something to you? You would not give up a thing knowing you. You would want it, but you wouldn't give up your body. Are you kidding?
Alex Nicholas, who was our Bitcoin beast, who's a pro Spartan race athlete who was on this show and was on American Ninja Warrior, says, until you get punched in the face, you're not really a man. So my bar mitzvah was for naught. Anything else, Karm?
I don't think in all cultures they say that.
Say what?
That you are not a man until you're punched in the face.
That's Alex's take, but I don't know. Maybe I should ask Nate to punch me in the face.
You want to know something very honestly? We can't afford the new teeth for you.
All right, everyone. Karm, parting thoughts. This is usually when you cut in as I'm saying goodbye. Anything that you would like to say?
I feel very humble, really humble that he opened up to us like that. He really is a very warm, very wonderful guy. And I'm beginning to, I know when I was working as a therapist, people were opening up and saying
Karm, I was
things.
trying to get off the air.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I never thought that doing a podcast, I would have that experience. I'm beginning to think. I'm beginning to I'm very humbled, honored, moved.
People always say, "Oh, well, are you getting any big guests?" Like, first of all, Nate's a big guest.
I have to say one more thing.
Cut me off.
When I was working as a therapist,
yes,
somebody would walk in and they would say, "Oh, you won't want to listen to me. I am so boring. I'm so boring," and I give you my word of honor, in 35 years, I never felt bored by people's stories. Every human being has stories, and if they open up enough to say to you how they feel about their stories, it's never boring. And I don't believe that you have to be a big celebrity or to have talking points prepared so that you are not boring, and I really think that that's a fallacy.
Karm, your tirade here at the end actually reminded me of something which is kind of interesting. Someone suggested a new segment which we can start next week, where since you have a background in therapy, we can reach out to our masses on social media and see what sorts of relationship or other questions people have, and you can answer them. Are you down for that?
You mean like Dr. Ruth?
Correct.
Dr. Ruth does it, but you compared me to her.
Yes.
I don't think I
said you're like Dr. Ruth. You're more like her when you're off air, actually, which disappoints me.
Yeah, no.
By the way, I'm looking at your notes. They're really copious. Nate Quarry, MMA, zombie cage fighter, 13 screws in his face. You said you were doing a ton of homework on him. That's your... See you later, America.
It was
Love
in
you,
my
America.
mind.
Love you.
You see, I asked questions related to him.
She's so lazy, man. She accusing me of being lazy. I called last night to see if she was doing homework. She's probably watching a TV show. Love you, America. Till next time.
Not true. I was working on this.